2024, 2025, almost every year, there is one question related to this concept that 80% of my output is driven by 20% input. So देखो, बोलने को this might look like a very complex question about a lot of words, a lot of big sentences, but when you come to it, it's a very, very simple, direct, easy question. Whenever you're reading a particular subject, I can give you a guarantee. Your output will just jump. Do I know all the tricks? No, there are 10 tricks, this trick, that trick. Itna dimag mat lagao. Right, so let's get started. Hello and welcome everyone to this session on the power of previous year questions. Now, naturally, a lot has been said about previous year questions and their importance in any stage of the civil services exam. And today we'll be talking about a particular stage, which is prelims. Now, prelims in particular is a stage where almost, 15, 16, 17 questions you can very easily do if you have been thorough with your previous year questions. So in today's session, I'll show you how, very easily you can gain a lot of insight into what kind of questions are going to come, which are the most important repeated themes. And 15 to 17 questions in any given year is a lot. You have to keep in mind that most people are missing the cutoff, who are serious candidates are missing the cutoff maybe by 5 marks. 5 marks is 3 questions. Here, you're getting 15 to 17 questions on a platter. So therefore, it's very, very important for us to have a look. Now, beyond that, we'll also look at 4 specific ways in which previous year questions are going to be very helpful for you. So let's get started with, I make this very tall claim of 17 plus questions. So let's look at some of those questions. Now, this is a question 25 on Araghatta. And Araghatta is a question which has earlier 2019 been asked as is before. Now, ab isse direct, what do you say? A number of people keep asking that, how many tests I'm supposed to give, what am I supposed to do, this, that. Last 10 years, the previous year questions is something that you need to do before any tests or anything. Now, this is something that I've repeatedly said elsewhere in videos, in classes, in mentor calls. I'll repeat it one more time. A very simple idea, whenever you've done a subject, go through the previous year questions, give a test. And on that basis, you can then sit and review what more needs to be done. Let's look at another question. This is another from 2025. Self-respect movement. And very similar, self-respect movement. Now, this is a question where you'll see that it is not directly self-respect movement. This is just one of the options. But now that you have other options also, it is important for us to then pay attention to them. Right. Coming to another one. Now, this is a repeated theme. RBI is a massively repeated theme in prelims. Almost every year, 1 or 2 questions you will get related to the RBI. Now, this question, per se, it is talking about the RBI. Mandates all listed companies to submit a business responsibility and sustainability report. But which body do you think in India is responsible for sort of listed companies? Right? It is SEBI, not RBI. And as soon as you do this, that this is talking about the SEBI and not the RBI, you will be able to solve this question. You will see that 2022 mein RBI से related आपसे फिर से question है. 2021 में, retail investors through demat account, treasury bill, all of these sorts of related to listed companies and how they are operating in India. Not just RBI, but the listed ecosystem in India. Us pe bar you are getting questions. Now let's look at another subject, polity. So almost every other year, some question related to either speaker or parliament. Now this is from 22, this is from 24, and this is from your very recent years. So almost every year, if there is a particular topic which is being asked again and again and again, is it not my responsibility then to go and study these topics in detail? Right? And that is what you have to understand about the power of previous year questions. And we've seen it in economy, we've seen it in history, we've seen it in polity, we'll see it in geography also. Okay, you go and just look for atmosphere almost every year, and not just atmosphere, forget, the length and breadth of atmosphere, very specific things. How heat absorbed and trapped by the atmosphere, heat absorbed, solar incoming radiation, 2024, 2025, almost every year, there is one question related to this concept. Now, beyond this also, if you go into geography, you'll see that almost every year, there is a question related to oceans. So then, it is important for us to ask and understand that, if previous year questions are such a big trove of data, of, clear insights into what is going to be asked in this exam, why aren't people able to figure it out? There's a simple reason for it. And the reason is that when I'm given too much information, TMI, too much information, it is very, very easy to get overwhelmed. And that's the idea. Whenever I say that, go and study last 10 years ka previous year questions, how many of you felt a little bit of this? That's a normal thing to feel. So this is why I'm going to break it down into specific parts. First, we'll talk about that there are some larger things that are repeated in prelims. We'll look at the general trends of prelims, and then we'll come and look at the specific trends within previous year questions and how you can approach them. What exactly are you supposed to do? All of these things we'll discuss. Now, first and foremost, let's have an overview of prelims itself. So every year, you will get this sort of a breakup. Agar history, this is modern history, 9 questions. Ancient medieval art and culture, I think 7 questions. Between the two of them, almost about 14-15 questions. Right. Polity mein 18-19 questions. Same for economy. Geography had about 14 questions. Environment about 13. Science and tech 10. And current affairs 8. Now, if you go elsewhere, there might be slight variations in this. Okay, somebody might say there was one more question in environment. Somebody might say one less question here and there. That is primarily because of this, current affairs. Some questions are overlapping. Current affairs ka question, I can very well say that it was a question related to economy, but again, it was also in current affairs. So therefore, don't be too fixated on, okay, exact number, this, that, whatnot. But general number is what I want you to pay attention to. The general idea over here is every year, almost, there are these major subjects for you, which is history, polity, economy, geography, environment. All of these are getting 15 to 16 questions. Right? 15 to 16 questions, and then you're getting some questions on science and tech, some questions current affairs. Now, whenever we are looking at this sort of a trend, so in each subject, there is going to be a difficulty. Now, difficulty, we will take a simple approach to difficulty. In order to understand difficulty, we'll, divide questions into easy, medium, and hard. Now, what are easy questions? Easy questions are things which are, very, very directly given to you in the basic sources that you're reading. Basic sources kya hai? Ki modern history ke liye, I'm reading Spectrum. Polity ke liye, I'm reading Lakshmikant. Basic sources, if you're covering, you will be able to do the easy questions. These are things that are directly covered in the sources. Medium questions, not direct, or maybe they are application based. Right, hard questions, these will be very, very fact heavy. Now, medium questions and easy questions, this is where my game lies. If I am making mistakes in these two types of questions, right, if I'm making mistakes in the easy questions and the hard questions, I am out of the game. I am out, I am not going to be selected in prelims. If I'm making mistakes in hard questions, that is fine, because everybody is going to make mistakes over here. This is something that you have to, ingrain in your head, that whenever I am studying any general studies subject or any subject for that matter, I need to focus on the basics. What basics? Over here, we have the 80-20 rule. 80-20 rule हमारा क्या है? That 80% of my output is driven by 20% input. तो ये 20% input we will find out through previous year questions. This is exactly why we need to do your PYQ analysis, because there is exactly a 20% input. Like for example, we just saw that speaker pe every year almost there is a question, or like speaker se related somewhere or the other there is a question. Atmosphere pe there is a question. Ocean pe there is a question. RBI se related there is a question. Listed companies. So again, in the entirety of, let's say, Indian economy that I'm supposed to study, if RBI pe bar there is a question, is it not part of my 20%? I should be really thorough with my RBI, because RBI pe question to aayega. So this is what you have to keep in mind. Now, a number of times what will happen is that people start worrying about, I want to focus on, art and culture. I want to focus on international relations. I want to focus on current affairs. Now, these are important subjects. I'm not saying that they're not important subjects, but you have to keep in mind that history, polity, geography, economy, these four basic subjects, these are the ones which will primarily be here. Why? Because these are the ones where you have fixed very simple sources. If you cover them, almost the easy questions you'll be able to do. Most of the medium questions you'll be able to do. The hard questions will be such that, even person who has, let's say, cleared the exam before and then goes and sits for prelims again, there are some hard questions that even they will not be able to do. So I am not competing here. Don't focus on that, I will do current affairs and I will do IR and then focus on a lot of these things, because those are any which way going to be hard. My focus is I should solve these easy and medium questions fast, clearly, make fewer mistakes, and from there move forward. Now, basic easy questions, I've said there are easy questions. Let's have a look at some of the easy questions. Right. Easy questions is this. Why is this an easy question? Because Fine Arts class 11th NCERT is something that you are recommended to read any which way for art and culture. And here the question is asked, Mattavilasa, Vichitra Chitta and Gunbhara. Which of the following has these names? And we have directly over here Mahendra Varman 1, who has numerous titles such as Vichitra Chitta, and the rest of the titles continue on the next page. Page number 62, Fine Arts class 11th NCERT, direct basic question. Now, how many of you have seen this image? Abhi, given this, can you not do this? So would you call this an easy question or not? This is, for this reason, a very easy question. Because if you are prepared for UPSC, you will be studying Indus Valley at one point or another. Indus Valley, you will see or hear or learn about the dancing girl. Direct question, easy question. Therefore, that's the idea. Now, again, a very, very direct and easy question. Now, why is this an easy question? Because this is simply asking you, when did this major event occur? And on the basis of that, how did the further progress of the nationalist movement change? So for this, A, B, C or D. So naturally we know it is not Quit India movement. Government of India Act 1935 is when this was done. So therefore not this. It's between these two. Right. And the Pune Pact is when we know that when Gandhiji and Dr. Ambedkar compromised and came to a settlement. That is your answer. This is something, any history book that you read, this thing you will read about. There is no history book which talks about the modern history of India which will not talk about this. Direct given. Any book. Right. Now, coming to another one. This is an easy question, I feel. Why? Because again, a lot of information. How many of you at one point or another have seen an ad for or have heard from a friend that, options trading is a great thing, right? So because we've heard of options trading, so because, on social media, it is absolutely flooded. It's just everywhere. And because of that, we've also heard of that SEBI is cracking down. right? SEBI is massively cracking down on these things. Now, on the basis of this, the third option says there is no regulatory body either to warn small investors or to act on unregistered financial advisors in this regard. We know SEBI has been cracking down. So then as soon as you do 3 wrong, there is only one option left. So देखो, बोलने को this might look like a very complex question about like, a lot of words, a lot of big sentences. But when you come to it, it's a very, very simple, direct, easy question. If I am open-minded in the exam, I will be able to do this question. Would you agree? Yes or no? So this is the idea of basic or easy questions. Now let's come to the medium and the hard questions. Medium and hard questions mein there is a distinction that I want to help you develop, which is conceptual versus factual. Conceptual questions are those which once you have understood a concept, I don't need to particularly remember it. Why? If I know the concept, I can logically walk my way through, okay, this might have happened because of this, that might have happened, and so on and so forth. Factual question will be something very, very specific. It will ask you a scheme, and scheme ka minor point, okay, in this scheme, this much percentage, or this has been done there, that, XYZ. Very factual question. Conceptual questions I don't want to make a mistake. These questions will usually be in your medium difficulty. Factual can be medium, but usually they can be very, very hard. Right? So let's have a look. Every subject almost can have conceptual versus factual questions. Now this is an example. 1 and 2. Which one of these two is the factual question? Right? So a lot of people are saying that 2 is the factual question. It's talking about a particular scheme, and then it's talking about, okay, what are the provisions of that scheme? Some people are saying 1 is also factual. Now, 1 I would not consider factual for the very simple reason that exclusive powers of the Lok Sabha, if I have understood how the union government works, how the balance of power works, if I've studied polity, multiple times this will come here, there, everywhere, ki, acha, what is the power of the Lok Sabha? Matlab, only the Lok Sabha can, ratify an emergency. Only the Lok Sabha can pass a no confidence motion, right? Multiple times I will have read this. So even if 1 or 2 things I forget, somewhere or the other, this will work out. Now, important why this is a conceptual question is this. I know that Lok Sabha is one of the houses of parliament. There is another house, Rajya Sabha. President of India representing, all the states, all the unions, all the territories, everything. President of India will not be only an exclusive power of Lok Sabha. So even if other 2 I can figure out, third से मुझे वो concept यहाँ पे अटकेगा, right? तो polity में we'll see a lot more of these types of questions. This question I should not get wrong. If I've done my basic of Lakshmikant, you will get this question. This question, current affairs mein, if you were paying attention, maybe you'll get this, maybe you'll miss this, but this question definitely don't get wrong. Economy की बात करते हैं. Over here, between 1 and 2, which one do you think is the factual question now? Right, so over here, obviously it is much more clearer कि this one, number 2, is your factual question. Factual question क्यों है? It is asking about very specific things. Specific things, right? That all 30 critical minerals is a resource-rich country in all the 30 critical minerals. Now, उसके बाद, again, all might make it slightly easier for you to attempt. This is the key trick over here. No matter how many minerals we have identified, there might be some which we are not rich in still. Parliament has amended the MMRD Act, MMDR Act, empowering the central government to exclusively auction mining lease and composite licenses for certain critical minerals. This is something very specific. Now, इसमें ये कुछ गलती हो सकती है. Was it 2023 only? Was it somewhere else? So somewhere sooner or later, there is a lot more scope for me to make mistakes over here. If you understand how inflation works, I can logically walk my way through each of these options. I don't have to remember, is the rupee going to appreciate, depreciate? inflation हो रहा है तो what is going to happen? All that I have to do is start and keep following the steps. Right? Inflation is too high. Reserve Bank is likely to buy government securities. Is this going to happen? Buying government security का क्या मतलब होगा? RBI, government. Step by step will work. RBI has money. We'll make better money. Right? And government has GSEC. If there is inflation in the market, what does that mean? That there is already too much money in the market. So what is the idea? Should the RBI sell this to the government or basically buy government security and give government money to spend? Should it do that? Yes or no? If there is already too much money in the market, RBI by buying government securities, what will it be doing? It will be adding more money into the market, which is going against the idea. If inflation is too high, RBI will not do that. Now, I don't remember this, but I know the concept of inflation, and therefore I will be able to, walk my way through each and every one of these steps. Therefore, concept. Right? So similarly, in geography, मतलब geography में तो you will have to, geography में definitely don't miss the previous year questions because like देखो एक बार इसको isothermal maps in the month of January. This is from 2025, and we'll see another question later on where isothermal maps in the month of January. Very similar question in 2024. Now, between 1 and 2, which one do you think is the factual question over here? Right? 1, maybe you need some information. It's not like you can do this without information. But 1 is the kind of information that if I have once understood how the global circulation of currents works, I will be able to solve this question. 2, on the other hand, is straight facts. Okay, achha, which are the new airports which are coming up? Do I remember the names or do I not remember the names? That is it. How, there is nothing connected to it. This is just an isolated fact. Ki, achha, which are the new airports which are coming up? Ratta mara hua hai, well and good, you'll be able to do it. But if I've understood how ocean currents work, I will be able to do this question even if I don't know the exact thing. Yes, no. I will be able to logically walk my way through. So this is your conceptual and this is your factual question. So idea क्या है यहाँ पे? That बार whenever I'm getting factual questions, it is easier for me to make mistakes in factual questions, and therefore my job is to primarily solidify my concepts. If my concepts are clear, all of these questions that we've seen on the left side of the board, we will find very easy to do, except for this one, because this is a factual question. This is such a factual question that the theme of the 16th BRICS Summit was strengthening multiculturalism for just global development and security. Everything else is correct. But instead of multiculturalism, it was multilateralism. That's the only thing that has changed over here. And because of that, statement 3 is incorrect. So, this is what I'm calling as a factual question. BRICS was obviously in news, constantly there, and therefore, here it is very easy for me to make mistake. Would you agree? If logically, there is nothing logic that I can apply over here in order to find whether multiculturalism is the right answer or there is some other thing. So, what is the idea? That when we're trying to use the power of PYQs for Prelims 2026, we are trying to understand all of these patterns. We are trying to imbibe all of these patterns, that I am not fixated on the factual questions a lot. I will use the factual questions. It's not like कि मैं ignore कर दूंगा उनको, but I am focused much more on the conceptual questions. I am focused much more on the themes which are repeated again and again. These are the sorts of things that will give me the most output for my time investment. क्योंकि देखो, in the end, the only limiting factor for prelims preparation is time. If you had 2 years to prepare, all of you would be very well prepared. It is because you have 5 months. And in those 5 months, there are a lot of things that need to be done, that we feel stressed, that we feel overwhelmed, that we feel that, it is something very, very, very difficult. So therefore, we need to make the best use of our time, for which we had talked about the 80-20 rule or 80-20 principle, as you may call it. So by 80-20, let us focus on the conceptual questions. अब concepts कौन से? Let's talk about this. Now, previous year questions के लिए there are 3 major ways which we are looking at it, right? The what? Very clearly we are able to identify the themes from each particular subject. Each particular faculty for the subjects will be taking up themes. Today I'll be showing you some general themes from each subject, right? Now, this is something that definitely you need to do. Now, second is strategic studying. माने कि themes identify हो गई, then what do I do with those themes? How do I work on them? What is the idea? Finally, we need to understand exam के standards. We need to be able to understand कि अच्छा, how much depth will UPSC go into over here? What is going to be expected of me? So, doing all of this, ये सब understanding करके निकलता क्या है? That there are 4 basic ways in which previous year questions are absolutely directly impactful for you. Noticing patterns के अलावा common sense, important themes. Sometimes when UPSC is being lazy, there is a direct repetition of questions. मतलब history does not repeat, but it rhymes. UPSC at times repeats itself. UPSC को rhyme करने का rhyme तो almost every year it is doing, but sometimes it is directly just like words are not even changed, same question as is. And then this is something that also often emerges, that if let's say Donny Polo Airport के बारे में हमने बात करी थी, so that is a question, let's say I did not know, but now that it has been asked before, now it is my job to now look at okay, where are these airports, what is happening with them. These are things that we'll have to do. Let's start with the most juicy one, which is exact repetitions. So exact repetition, this is a question from prelims 2019 and 2023. Matlab, not even a single word has changed over here. All that has changed is B और C option को ऊपर नीचे कर दिया है. Here is a slightly more indirect repetition. Which one of the following best reflects the chief purpose of the constitution of a country? Constitutional government means 2023 and 2021. Concept समझ आया? Very simple. Constitution of the country, it defines the limits on power of government. Constitutional government, government limited by the terms of the constitution. Right? Basic things. But there are sometimes these sorts of very direct repetitions. Now, let's come to another important thing. This is something that has been always happening, but last couple of years it has happened a lot more, and I'll show you more examples. But this is one of the most prominent examples, that in 2022 prelims, there was a question on match the following. And यहाँ पे अब obviously these options are not too great, but if you had then studied these countries, where is Chad, where is Guinea, where is Lebanon, where is Tunisia, in the next year, Chad, Guinea, Mali, Sudan, again in the news. Now there is twice the reason that I need to go and look into these, because next year, 2024, now the question is about the Sahel region, right? साहेल रीजन में क्या हो रहा है? चैड, सुडान, नाइजर, Mali. Aren't these the same countries that we were constantly talking about? Right. And abhi recently you might have heard that there was a volcanic eruption. So there was a volcanic eruption somewhere over here. Right. Ethiopia. So somewhere or this this region has been in news, and therefore it is now your job that even if I did not know all of these things before, now I need to look into, okay, what was happening in Chad, what is happening in Guinea, in Lebanon, in Tunisia. Now, Lebanon is not a country which is in Africa. It is in the Middle East or West Asia, It is a country north of Israel. Why are we talking about it again? Israel, has it not been in news? Constantly in news. So if there is a country which is constantly this much in news, you will find previous year questions which are asking about it. You will find previous year questions which are asking about its neighbors. So these are sorts of things that we need to focus on. Now, at times, direct repetition हमारा है कैसे कि भाई directly question is asking about the same thing. Other times what we'll do is, in the context of the Indian economy, OMO, open market operations, refers to, and then in 2023, sterilization. Right. So what I need to also understand is that open market operations के आसपास I will have to study. So what is happening when I'm studying based on these options of the question? I need to be clear on each and every one of them. Maybe I know the right answer, but am I clear on each and every one of the options? If not, that is a job that you need to do. Now, somebody might very clearly ask, how many years of previous year questions should I look at? And that is a good question to ask. You can give as high a number as you want over here, but I'll give you a simple answer. Start with 5 years. Start with the most recent 5 years, 2021 to 2025. Once you have done those 5 years, add plus 5 more. Then if you have done those 5, add plus 5 more. जितना पीछे आप जाते हो, the further back you go, मतलब you can do 30 years of questions if you have to. But again, please keep in mind, what are we constrained by? We are constrained by time. We do not have enough time to do everything. So therefore, start with 5 years. Do the 5 years first. Then if you have more time left, do 5 more years. More time left, do 5 more years. Right? ये बेसिक सी चीज एक आप ध्यान रख सकते हो. Now, this is again one of those very frequently repeated topics. Buddhism and Jainism. Here we have another example of every object, even the smallest particle, has a soul. This is one of the options given in a previous paper. In 2023, that option has become a full question. Right? So previous year questions बहुत ही तरीके से they're giving us a lot of information. They're giving us a lot of information about exactly where I need to focus on. Is the point that I've been trying to make clear, that options are going to give you, okay, what more do I need to study? If I've studied this, if I've studied Jainism, yes, I know this. But if I look at this in a little more detail, somewhere or the other, it will enable me to solve further questions. Think of it this way, that UPSC wants to create questions of a particular standard each year, right? And how do you think they get it done? The simplest way to get it done would be that, whoever is setting the questions, you show them the last 10, 15, 20 years the questions that, these are the questions. We want this quality. So therefore, at times when the paper setters, when the people who are making the questions are being absolutely lazy, this is exactly what they do. They'll take one option from somewhere and on the basis of that make a whole question. So this is also something that you need to do in your studies. Once I have completed my study of, let's say, ancient medieval art and culture, या इसको generic रखते हैं, let's say I've done my study of subject. Next step, I need to look at the previous year questions. Next step, I need to give a test. Based on these two, I need to review. And based on this review, I might need to go back and read some of the subject all over again. तो ये आपका एक बेसिक सा फ्लो बन जाता है, because let's say previous year you studied the subject, whatever your source may be. You looked at the previous year questions, you realized कि अच्छा, I am not able to solve the previous year questions. So that is your first indication. Either you have missed something, you were not paying attention while you were reading the subject, or maybe you need a better source. Now, better source के लिए, I would not recommend that you read 4 more other books. Usually, it is a problem of me not remembering something that was there in the book, right? So previous year questions will tell you whether you remember what you have read or not. Tests will give you then some new information also. Both of these are going to be helpful. Now, a lot of people feel that, if I'm just sort of giving a test series, if I'm just using tests, so what will happen is I will not be used to the UPSC standard questions, right, which are previous year questions. So I'm only going to do previous year. Don't do that. Why? Because see, it is, while I've given you some examples of questions being directly repeated, it is rare. 2 questions in the last 20, 30 years. So don't be fixated on that. Giving tests also opens our mind and forces us to think in different ways. And that is something that's very, very important. Because hota kya hai, while we're preparing, while we're studying, we are just using or dumping a lot of information in our brain. How many of you feel that, there's just too much information that I need to dump into my brain, right? And this dumping of information wala part gets doubled. Why the issue gets doubled? Because as soon as I'm done with the subject, I've moved to the next subject. Now I have to revise that previous subject also. So that dumping just keeps going on. So therefore, we just don't need to dump. We also need to practice something called retrieval. What is retrieval? That one is the part, मतलब brain के दो major functions होते हैं आपके. We are now studying about the brain in the middle of a PYQ session, but I think it's important. So one is the part where we are putting some input, right? And the other is the part where we are getting some output. In between, magic in the brain. So there are two processes that are happening in the brain, which is encoding and retrieval. Reading is just one of the ways in which you can encode or add new information into the brain. Reading is just one of them. Doing active recall is another one. Now let's do a very simple active recall right here and now. We are almost 30, 40 slides in. Can you write down what were the major sections of the discussion that we have done so far? I don't want the exact questions that we discussed. I don't want the exact like things that I pointed out. I just want the larger sections of it. I'll give you 2 minutes. Take your time. Let me know in chat. So this is a very, very good simple exercise that lets you know how much attention you were paying actually in the session. So see, what is happening is that people are giving me 1 or 2 sections. They are not able to clearly identify that, we talked about factual versus conceptual questions. We saw PYQ importance, Jainism, Buddhism. नहीं, ठीक है. Larger section क्या था? Bank, RBI. No. What I'm asking is, if we talk about the larger section, so the sections would be something like, we started with, I made a claim that 10 to 15 questions or 15 plus questions every year, and then I showed you question sum. Show PYQ repeats, right? Then we looked at prelims breakup. People forgot this. We looked at how many questions are coming from almost each subject in your prelims. Iske baad we talked about, difficulty. Yes or no? Difficulty is where we talked about your easy, medium, hard. This is what I told you, conceptual versus factual questions. Beyond this, I also told you that, 80-20 rule is something that's very, very important. And for 80-20 rule, we'll have more sessions. Then I told you about 4 ways in which PYQs help. 4 ways में first we saw exact repetition. Second में we saw options. Right. Third में we'll see more things. थर्ड में और थर्ड की बजाय what we have done right now over here we have created a new section of brain encoding retrieval active recall, right? So this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say that retrieval practice is something that you have to do. You will constantly feel overwhelmed, you will constantly keep feeling overwhelmed so long as you don't run your brain, try hard to remember, okay, what was the first thing that we talked about. This is going to take effort, and this is exactly what we were talking about in terms of retrieval, active recall, trying to quiz yourself. Okay, did I miss something? Okay, there were four things that we were talking about, like I can only remember two. What were the other two? How many of you have done this sort of a thing while reading a subject? And be honest with me over here, yes or no, have you tried this while reading any subject? Good. So for those which who are in the large majority that have not done this, this is something that if you take nothing else back from this session, take this and do this wherever, whenever you're reading a particular subject. I can give you a guarantee, your output will just jump. मतलब आपको लग रहा होगा कि अच्छा ये चीजें इतनी सारी याद करनी क्या करनी, just take 2 minutes at the end of a chapter to just run through your head कि okay, what were the headings in the chapter. If you can just do this, you will be well ahead of like a lot of the competition, right? So coming back from our discussion, we now want to look for repeated themes. Now, repeated themes will be specific subjects, and repeated themes may then there'll be a very simple way for us to deal with the repeated theme. One, identify a theme. Two, build your notes. Identify a theme may, or build your notes may, I think we can take a small gap in the middle. Important elements. Right, theme मैंने identify कर ली. Let's say theme I've identified that speaker. So what about the speaker? That is what I'm identifying in important elements. So I should be very clear on who appoints the speaker. I should be very clear on what are the powers of the speaker. I should be very clear on what are the difference between speaker and chairman of Rajya Sabha. What are the exclusive powers of the speaker? These are important elements I've identified. Then okay, then if it is only talking about these important themes, then I want you to build your notes, right? So with that in mind, let's look at some very, very easily repeated themes. This is 2025 prelims, 2024 prelims. Who can tell me the theme over here? See, atmosphere is the first level theme. Good. What about the atmosphere do I want to pay more attention to? Right, the heat budget. Heat budget, or basically heat in atmosphere. तो ये चीज आपको करनी पड़ेगी. You will have to think about these things. These will not be easy. We will help you out with this. We'll try and do this for you. But beyond that, always keep in mind that so long as I'm just putting information in my head, I'm not trying to recall it by myself. I'll give you all of these themes for geography. But so long as then you don't go, acha, what was that? What was that? What was that? It is not going to stick. And all of the information you have, but you'll not be able to use it. So please keep that in mind. So therefore, why are we doing this? Why am I asking you to give me these names? Because it is forcing your brain to work. Let's look at another one. Now, obviously, I have, this was the question that I was talking about earlier. Isothermal map, month of January. Isotherm, January, 2025 prelims, 2024 prelims. Telling you exactly isotherms, right? So here, theme is pretty clear that I want to study ocean currents. And with that, I want to study isotherm maps, right? Agar ocean currents and isothermal maps you have done, there is no way that you will make mistakes in these questions. These are very, very simple questions once you have read this concept, right? So now there are obviously issues with these sorts of statements also, and this is, I feel, ऐसा there is no trick particularly to solving these kinds of questions. These are what we call assertion and reason. Statement 1 is an assertion, statement 2 is the reason, and generally what is asked is whether both of these statements are true, and if they are true, is 2 the reason for 1, right? तो assertion reason question solve करने के लिए the most important thing for me is conceptual clarity. If I've understood the concept, these questions will become easy. If I don't understand the concept, if I've just rectified the information ki no, isotherm is this way, that way, if I've just rectified the concept, these are the hardest questions in the world, right? Let's look at another one. This is again geography, very similar. Heat budget 2023 prelims, 2022 prelims. Heat budget पे बार बार either sometime like that gases are absorbing heat, other times कि भाई clouds are reflecting heat. Sooner or later, every aspect of that heat budget concept is going to be covered. One way or another, it has already been covered. So अब जैसे now this question, let's look at this. In this, I want to be thorough with each and every option. This is where जो options वाली बात हम कर रहे थे पहले, that is also very, very valid and applicable. That if let's say I've found the answer, right? If I've found the answer, then okay, let's say I'm done, but I'm not clear about the other options. Now let's say total amount of insolation received at the equator is roughly 10 times that received at the poles. I know that this is wrong, but I'm not sure, is it exactly 10 times, or I'm sure it's not 10 times, but how much is it? Is it 2 times? Is it maybe 3 times? Is it less than 2 times? Is it, what exactly is this number? That is something that I then have to go and study also. Heat budget is the theme I've identified. Exact basic details, it is also telling me, because of 5-6 questions if you've had on heat budget, it is telling you exactly all of the important aspects. राइट यही चीज करी थी ना हमने. We have identified the theme that heat budget, important elements कि भी how much insolation difference between equator and the poles, what are infrared का component, what is UV का component. Once I have identified my elements, then I will make my notes out of this, right? So moving on, similarly, very frequently repeated, Buddhism and Jainism. So Jainism का example we saw in the options वाला thing. Buddhism का similarly, you will see a lot of questions almost every year you get, either based on the life of the Buddha or based on the practices of Buddhist religion. So therefore, if it is so often repeated, it is very, very important that Buddhism and Jainism, I am thorough with it. Ancient and medieval art and culture seems like a very big and vast subject per se, right? I'm supposed to read like that R.S. Sharma, Satish Chandra, those are massive books in and of themselves. And then beyond that, like, some question is asked which is very, very minute. But if I'm identifying a theme, I want to hit that theme again and again on this. राइट तो और थीम देखते हैं. नाउ दिस इज अ क्वेश्चन फ्रॉम 2025 प्रीलिम्स. बेसिक कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल प्रोविजंस, फंडामेंटल राइट्स, डीपीएसपीस. अगर मैंने ये थीम एक बार आइडेंटिफाई कर लिया तो व्हाट आई विल सी, 2024 प्रीलिम्स, 2021 प्रीलिम्स, राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी, somewhere related to fundamental rights, writs, somewhere related to your fundamental rights, is it not? Bar around that theme a question is being asked. Now you can't say that this is an exact repetition of some question that has been asked before. No, but if constantly questions are coming related to DPSP, related to fundamental rights, I should be thorough. Now, what is also telling you, acha, what are the most important parts within this? Because when I come to writs, this is itself a repeated theme. Right? There have been questions on what does a writ of certiorari mean? What does a writ of prohibition mean? So this is something that you have to constantly come back to, this idea that so long as I keep doing these three things, your prelims journey will become a lot easier. If you just keep doing these three things, identify the important elements, and then on that basis, if I want to make notes, I make notes. If I don't want to make notes, if I just want to note it down, scribble it down in my book somewhere, good enough. It's fine with me. I don't care. Kyunki per se, I never built my notes for prelims. I figured कि spectrum के end पे there are obviously chapter summaries that are given, which are awesome. If I want to add something more, I'll just scribble it in those chapter summaries. Polity में Lakshmikant itself is in notes format. So what I would do, chapter के start पे there is some space. I will scribble down some important information which I think I can summarize the chapter in. So always do this. Now, let's come to now other themes भी हैं यहाँ पे obviously, but we'll have the more detailed sessions. History का session होगा, polity का session होगा. Like for example, और Government of India Acts जो हैं, these are also a repeated theme. Almost every time there is some or the other question which is coming up. 23 prelims में, 24 prelims में, 25 में didn't come, but very regularly a question is asked on these themes. So beyond that, let's look at the last part, which is common sense and which is the most interesting part. Now, a lot of people also call this, tricks or, elimination or this, that, whatever you may want to call it. What I like to think of it as is common sense, which is also simply logical thinking. If I can think logically in the exam, a lot of questions become easier. Ye tricks, elimination, ye sab, like it becomes a very fancy name, and then people start worrying about do I know all the tricks? No, like there are 10 tricks, this trick, that trick. Itna dimag mat lagao. Basic things hai, common sense hai, logic hai, everybody can do this. So let's look at what exactly is to be done. Now, for example, in prelims 2025, tell me the answer of this one. Number 42. You don't know, you don't have enough information, but suddenly everybody has the answer. Right? Because whenever it is saying all, how many of you have seen unmanned aerial vehicles? What are these unmanned aerial vehicles also called? What is a common term for UAV? Awesome. Right? These are drones. And if you have seen drones, you have seen many kinds of drones, right? आजकल शादियों में drones उड़ते हैं, देखा है वो? शादियों में drones उड़ते हैं. Then we have those American drones which are dropping like, hundreds of kilos of bombs. Then we have those mini drones which like you might have some hobbyists around you that might be flying them, all kinds. And then obviously you will see a ton of drone videos on YouTube, either on the Red Bull channel or somewhere or the other. So like a lot of drones are coming out. So then we know that because there is such a wide variety of drones, there are small drones, there are big drones. Some drones will be able to take off vertically, but all of them, maybe not. All drones can do automated hovering. Maybe, maybe not. We know that there are so many variations and functionalities that some drones might not have that function. All drones can use battery only as a source of power supply. Matlab, I'm sure they can try something else also. If it is just a battery, or maybe there can be drones which can also have, like if it is a big enough drone, it can also be run by solar power. It can have, solar cells on its wings. It can be directly plugged in to my, electricity outlet, and maybe its range is only so long as my wire is, but it is a possibility, right? Even if I don't know anything about this question, I can talk myself through it. That, okay, possibly this is going to be the correct answer over here. Similarly, What is the answer for 18? Right, so this is what I mean when I say common sense. That when it's saying all, there should always be some doubt in your head. When it is saying some, there is always a possibility that yes, there might be something. Life is weird, and life has found a way to grow in, like, the coldest of places, the deepest of places. There are still, people express surprise when they come back from deep sea missions. Like, for example, James Cameron, the very, very famous director of the Avatar movie. So he is somebody who is said to have gone to the Marianas Trench. I'm sure everybody is aware of what Marianas Trench is, so we're not going to go there. So he went there, and what he did in his submersible was that he was looking out and around, and it's said to be that some of the things that he saw underwater, 9-10 kilometers deep, is something somehow inspired the visuals in his movie, right? So that's the idea, that there is life even at that depth. There is life, let's say, on top of like the coldest places, the hottest places, the most acidic places, all kinds of places life finds a way to survive. So some, sure, possible. So this is what is your common sense. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि ये 1 or 2 times होता है. This is frequently done. Many a times you'll have these sorts of questions. Naturally, this is 25, this is 23, even in 2019, and you go further beyond that, this was much more common. So therefore, people who were giving prelims in 17, 18, 19, 20 had a lot of these sorts of questions, which made it like, but then logical tricks and elimination tricks became very, very popular. But nowadays, it's a very simple thing. It is still valid. It is still applicable. All that you have to do is just sit quietly and think things through. If you can do that, it will work. Now, it's not just okay, all or some or these sorts of extreme statements. Try and solve this one. There are obviously some people right now who have Googled this. Okay. But that's the idea, that if you are either from Bengal or from Maharashtra, it'll be very easy for you to do this question. Why? If you're from Maharashtra, Sakharam Deoskar is a very Marathi name. And then Desh by Deoskar, specific context of the region of Bengal. Okay. Doubt, I should doubt. Similarly, if you're Bengali, you will know that this is not a very Bengali name. So then, like, there should be some doubt. And as soon as that there is some doubt, the answer is this. Common sense, nothing else. This is a question that I encountered while I was giving my 6th attempt, and the simple thing was that I had never heard of this person, Sakharam Ganesh Deoskar. In 6 attempts, I had read more books than was necessary. I had cleared the exam twice. I had a lot of information, and yet I had never heard of this guy. And this is a question which begs for you to use common sense. Now, let's look at this one. Number 28. Right, so see, now इसमें क्या है? इसमें थोड़ा reverse logic है. Reverse logic क्या है? Whittle Vidwansak. This is another question from the year 2020. While sitting in this exam, again, same things, 6 attempts, I've cleared this exam twice, a lot of information I've never heard of Whittle Vidwansak. And I'm like, bhai, kya ho raha hai ye? But then, first monthly journal to have untouchable people as its target audience. I know a lot of publications by Jyotiba Phule. I know a lot of publications by Gandhiji. I know a lot of publications by Dr. Ambedkar. I don't know who this person is. I don't know which publication that is. So, that is where somewhere that common sense connect comes in. Now, obviously, this is something that's very, very bold. It's going to take a lot of guts in order to do this. I did this. Ye wala I had skipped because Sakharam Ganesh Deoskar, I'm I am neither Marathi nor Bengali. I don't know. Deoskar is a very common, or Sakharam is a very Maharashtrian name. Now I know. But This one, I took a shot. If it was written by these three, I would have known the name. I would have read it somewhere. Because you have read something by all of these three, right? कि इन तीनों का लिखा हुआ कुछ ना कुछ you have read somewhere either in spectrum or in previous year questions. You've seen it so many times. These two you've not seen anywhere. By that, it should be connected. तो risk है, but common sense gets you somewhere. Now, this is again, this is more repetition of the logic that we had seen previously, which is some, many, all. So in this, obviously the correct answer will be all three. But basic है कि 24 prelims में this is asked, 23 में this is asked. मतलब even if 1 year it is getting skipped, sooner or later this sort of questions will come back all over again. So your job to be open to these ideas. So let's try and do this. I'll hide your hint. Right? तो अभी कर लिया काफी सारे लोगों ने. Let's look at the hint. African countries usually have really high birth rates. Nigeria should not be one of the options that I'm considering over here. As soon as I cross out Nigeria, I have only 2 options left. So the question is effectively 5 countries nahi hai. It is whether Italy is one of them. This is what the question is. Whether Italy is one of them. And because you might have heard, if you remember, COVID में, you remember the first wave, January of 2020, क्या हो रहा था? There were countries in Europe, Italy, Spain, France. What was happening? They were seeing a lot of deaths in old age homes, if you remember. याद है ये चीज? Right? So this is not something that I am taught in class, or like, somebody is going to specifically mention कि भाई COVID में, Italy and Spain may a lot of deaths were happening early may because old age homes and everything. But I remember this, do I not? If I remember this, this is also a piece of information that can be used by you in order to solve this part of it, that yes, possibly Italy was also here. Now obviously some people might not have heard that, some people might not have paid attention to it. So then there is other pieces of information. Japan and South Korea are definitely there. Italy has very similar characteristics. Italy, Spain, and even France to some extent. A lot of these Western European countries are aging much more rapidly. Correct answer over here is A. So देखो, whenever I'm in this situation where I have eliminated 2 options, तो इसके बारे में थोड़ा और बात कर लेते हैं. What is my probability when I have 4 options? What is my probability of choosing the correct option when I have 4 options? 25%, right? What is the probability when I have 2 options? 50%. So there is a like sort of a small csat thing that we'll do over here, in that whenever I am, let's say, 4 options, whenever I'm doing this, so what does the math work out as? Let's say I'm just guessing, I'm blind guessing, I'm marking all options as A. Right? I am feeling very, very lucky and I go to the prelims exam and I mark all 100 as A. What is going to happen? 100 questions mein I should get 25 correct and 75 wrong. Yes or no? Do you agree with this? If this is the case, if I mark all A, I should get 25 correct and 75 wrong. Right? So this will be plus 50 marks, 25 into 2, and negative of 2 by third, minus 50. I'll be at a net 0. Okay? 100 questions mein, if this is the case. Now, let's look at another option. In some questions where I'm able to eliminate one or two options. We are talking about a question similar to this, where we were able to eliminate two options, right? 2024 ka hi question hai. So questions like this still coming. So what is going to happen? Let's say we are doing this calculation only over 10 questions. 10 questions की वजह let's say 20 questions पे हम करते हैं इसको. तो how many should I get right? How many should I get wrong? 10 and 10, pretty good. 10 questions correct, 10 questions wrong. So math has suddenly changed over here. What is happening? Now this is plus 20 marks and this is negative of 10 into 2 by 3. So 20 by 3, which is 6.67. So effectively over here, I am plus 13 marks. Is this math clear? CSAT कर लिया हमने थोड़ा previous year questions के बीच में, but like, is the math clear to everyone that if I am at 25% probability, I mark all options as A, I will be at net 0. Probability suggests it, practically might be different. If there are, let's say 20 questions in the exam, let's say there are 20 questions in the exam, I am going to mark those 20 questions one way or another. I am not going to think about it. 20 questions may just take a guess. You will get half of them wrong. And that is okay. Because overall, you will be at plus 13 marks. So this is something that is very, very practical. Malab, takes guts in the exam, but very practical, that if in prelims, I can eliminate some options, one or two options, and there are 20 such questions where I'm unsure, I'm not sure between two options. I'm 100% ki bhai, acha, this is something wrong, this is something wrong, but I'm not sure between exactly the situation that we had over here. Right? Ki I am 100% sure Nigeria is wrong. I am not sure whether Italy is right. So in exactly this situation, mark. दिमाग मत लगाओ ज्यादा. A or C, take one shot and move ahead. You will get half of these questions wrong. You will get half of these questions wrong. Despite that, you will overall gain marks. So then now एक और चीज है यहाँ पे there is a follow-up question that often comes wherein people tell me that, you know, I took this sort of a guess and all of them were wrong. So if you're in such a situation where you guessed 20 questions, where you'd eliminated some options and all of them are wrong, in that case, please go and check whether you eliminated the right options. Sometimes people eliminate the correct answer and then they're like, I got all of them wrong. You will get them wrong because you eliminated the right answer, right? But is the basic idea clear over here? Because if this basic idea is clear over here, there is a very clear case that I want to take risk here. I want to take risk here. And I do not want to take risk here. Whenever I am getting this sort of a situation, very rewarding for me to take a risk. Right? तो और कुछ questions देख लेते हैं. For example, this is another sort of thing that constantly keeps happening. 2022 prelims, 21 prelims, I think there even 23 prelims mein this happened, that constitution as a sort of a guiding document, guiding book does not specify a lot of things. Constitution has broad guidelines only. So whenever there is a question which is somewhere sort of saying constitution has defined something or constitution classifies or certain provisions in the central government, in the provisions of the constitution give the central government right to issue directions to the RBI in public interest. So central government has the right to issue directions to RBI in public interest, but they will probably not be in the constitution. Now, isko please keep it and please take it with a pinch of salt. Why? Because in this particular case, the constitution does classify ministers but not into 4 ranks. It classifies them into 3. So this is the idea कि whenever we are talking about these logical things, these very, very basic things, it is only the probability of doubt that we are talking about. कि भाई अच्छा, if it is talking about that constitution has given the direct prohibition, maybe I am not 100% sure about this line, right? If it is saying the constitution has defined civil and criminal contempt, maybe it is mentioned, but it will definitely not define, right? There is a element of doubt that has to come in. So these are your basic logical tricks. Now this is something that is constantly happening. Let's say article 335 se related, you are asked कि भाई अच्छा article 335 of the constitution defines the term efficiency of administration. So that doesn't now mean that I'm going to go and rectify all the articles of the constitution. No, this is the bigger problem rather than the exact article itself. Efficiency of administration is a very, very broad term. It is very difficult to define, right? Constitution of India, even though Indian Constitution is one of the longest documents in the world, is not going to do it, right? So that about brings us to the end of the discussion. Right, chief purpose of the constitution. So I think ये 21 and 23 का तो हमने देखा था. This is the original of that in prelims 2014. A constitutional government is again basic चीजें हैं. They will keep repeating, but like I said, because of time constraints, time is your scarce resource. Therefore, I need to prioritize. And in that prioritization, therefore, emerges that even previous year questions start with 5 years. Then if you have more time, add 5. Then if you have more time, add 5. Don't start with the idea that I have to do 30 years of previous year questions. Start with 5. If 5 years are done, then move on to 5 more. This will help you